You are really welcome to this training where we are going to move on with the training, the French language. These training lessons are going to really break down things for you. Bienvenue à notre cours de formation de la langue française. Here, I will try to be going from English, trying to break things down into the French language so that the training can be as easy as possible. You really be learning while enjoying the experience. But now the question is, why is it important to really master the French language? Why can we really say that you made a very good decisions to really learn this fascinating language? It's important to keep in mind that French has a global reach. Why can we say that? Because French is spoken on 5 continents. And more to that, French is the official language in 29 countries worldwide. It is a language just like English that is truly global in terms of influence. Moreover, French is spoken by over 300 million people all over the world. You can really see the importance of this language. And beside that, French opens a lot of opportunities in terms of career and business opportunities because French is a key working language in many international organizations. For example, in the United Nations, in the European Union, in NATO, in the World Trade Organization, Red Cross, and many others. French plays an important role there as a major language. And also, in global business, French and French-speaking countries, along with France, you have countries like Canada, Belgium, Switzerland, and parts of Africa. These are major market players. Meaning that mastering the French language is going to really make things easy if you are dealing in the business domain. More to that also, being bilingual in English and French is going to open a lot of job opportunities in fields like diplomacy, translation, journalism, tourism, international relations, just to cite a few, and much more. And also, mastering the French language is going to boost for more opportunities in the field of education and even in terms of scholarship, because mastering French can grant access to prestigious universities in France and other francophone countries all over the world at a very low or no cost at all. Also, French-speaking institutions often offer scholarships and exchange programs to foreign students. And you see that mastering the French language is going to open up that other opportunity. And also, it's good to keep in mind that in terms of travel and culture, France is the most visited country in the world. So, speaking French is going to enhance our travel experience in case you were to travel to France, Switzerland, Belgium, Canada, many African countries, or many parts of the world where they speak the French language. Our interaction will be easier with the people living there. And also, it's good to keep in mind that French has really played a major role in many fields. For example, French has played major roles in literature, cinema, philosophy, fashion, gastronomy, art, and many more. Also, learning the French language is very important because this helps to sharpen our mind. Because as we know, learning another language enhances our cognitive skills, our memory, and even help us in problem solving. Yes. Also, it's good to keep in mind that French helps us understand English better. Why do we say that? Because about 30 to 40% of English words come from French. For example, have you heard words like rendezvous? These are English words. We have words like ballet, déjà vu. These are words that are used in English, but do you know that they have French origin? Mean that mastering this language is going to really help you to really improve in these other fields. But why can we really say that you are at the right place to really learn this fascinating language? You are at the right place because with more than 10 years of experience in the language field and even in the translation industry, I've gone through different techniques so as to break down the learning process to make things as easy as possible for you so that you can be learning this French language while enjoying learning it. I will try to break down things, and that is why we are going to begin with the basics, starting with things like the alphabet in the French language, numbers, adjectives, prepositions. I will start with the basics. I will be progressing so that as you are learning, you will see how things are as easy as possible. Really, take time to follow each lesson and take notes so that you can be able to apply them. And also, after each lesson, I've tried to prepare some assignments, some practical notes. Please take time to go through them as they are going to help you apply what you were able to learn in the course of the lesson so that the learning process can also be accompanied with some practical work that will fasten your learning process. And also, don't forget please to take few minutes to really give your review so as to show your appreciation for this material. I am more than convinced that as you go through these different lessons, you will really be able to master this fascinating and interesting language which is French. Once again, you are welcome on board, and I'm going to give my all to really help you to master this language as easily as possible. Really take time to follow each lesson and go through the different assignments that will be accompanying each lesson. Once again, you are welcome on board. Bienvenue à bord et que cette session de formation soit vraiment intéressante. Bienvenue une fois de plus. The first thing we need to master if you are to really understand the French language is the alphabet. We are going to do a comparison between the English language and the French language. We start with the first letter, what we pronounce in English A. A in French, you pronounce it A. What you pronounce in English A, you pronounce it in French A. For example, you have that sound A in English in the word clé, that is key, meaning that A in English In French, you pronounce it A. The next is what we pronounce in English B. What we pronounce in English B. In French, it is pronounced B. B is pronounced in French B. B is pronounced B. You have that sound in the word like B, B. You have it in the word B, B. That is what we call in English baby. The next word is what you pronounce in English C. C in French is C. C in English, in French you pronounce C. C. You have that sound in a word like say. That is say. Say meaning that is. The next is what you pronounce in English D. D. In English you pronounce it D. D is pronounced D. D. You have it in a word like début. Début. That is meaning in English beginning. And as D is day, like in début. The next is what you pronounce in English E. What you pronounce E. In French you pronounce it E or O. E or O. You have that sound in a word like je. Je. Je is play or game. Or you have it that sound again in a word like le. That is the. Le, that is the. The next is F. F. In French, it is the same. You still pronounce it F. Mean that F in French, it is still pronounced F. F. That is why I put here same in both languages. The next is what you pronounce in English G. 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 In French, you pronounce it J. G is pronounced J. J. You have it in a word like geography. 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 That is geography. The next is what you pronounce in English H. H. In French, it is H. H is pronounced H. H. The next is I. 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 In French, you pronounce it E. I is pronounced in French E. E. You have it in a word like li. Li, meaning bed. I is E, like in li, that is bed. The next is what you pronounce in English J. 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 In French, it is J. You pronounce J as J. J. You have it in a word like gilet. In that J, which in French is J, you pronounce it like in gilet. Gilet meaning in English pullover. Gilet meaning pullover. The next is K. 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 In French, it is pronounced K. K is pronounced K. K. K is pronounced K. Like in the word card. Like in the word card, which in English is cat. Cat. The next is what you pronounce in English L. 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 in French, it is the same. You still pronounce in French L. L is still pronounced in French L. That's why I say here same in both languages. Same in both languages. The next is M. The next is M. In English, in French, it is still the same. You still say M. Meaning that M, in French, it is still M. That's why I say same in both languages. M is M. The next is N. N in English. In French, it is still the same. You still say N. N is still N. That's why I say same in both languages. The next is what you pronounce in English O. What you pronounce in English O. In French, in the alphabet, it is O. O is pronounced O. O is pronounced O, like in the word O. O, like in the word O. O meaning water in English. The next is what we call in English P. 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 In French, you pronounce it P. P is pronounced in French P. P. You have that sound in a word like P. You have in a word like P. P. Meaning in English father. The next is what you pronounce in English cure. 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 In French, it is pronounced Q. Cure. In French, it is Q. 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 The next is what you pronounce in English R. 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 In French, it is R. 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 So they say it is soft. R. R is R. R. The next is S. In English, in French, it is still pronounced S. S. In the French language, it is pronounced S. S is pronounced S. That's why I say same in both languages. The next is what you call in English T. What do you call in English? T. T. In French, it is T. T. In French, it is T. T is T. Like in the word telephone. T. Like in the word telephone. That is phone in English. The next is what you call in English you. 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 In French, it is U. You. You pronounce it in French U. Pronounce it U. That's why you have to tight lip to be able to pronounce it properly. U is pronounced U. U. The next is V. V. In French, it is V. V. V is pronounced in French V. V. Like in the word vélo. V is V. V. Like in the word vélo. Vélo. Meaning in English bicycle. The next is W. W in French is W. W is what? W. W is W. W. The next is what you call X. X. In French, you pronounce it X. X is X. X is X. X. The next is what you call in English Y. Pronounce it X. X is X. X is X. X. The next is what you call in English Y. 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 In French, Y is pronounced Y. Y is pronounced Y. Y is pronounced Y. Y is Y. Y. The next is what you call in English Z. 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 That is in the US, or Z in UK. But in French, it is simply pronounced Z. Mean that Z or Z in English, in French it is Z. Z or Z in English is pronounced Z in French. Z. You have it in a word like zebra. Zebra. You have that sound. Zebra. Zebra. Meaning in English, zebra. Now let's talk about vowels. What we call in French, voyelle. Vowels, which we call in French, voyelle. French has 6 vowels. French has 6 vowels that we are going to touch under. But then there are more vowel sounds. Why? There are more vowel sounds because we have other vowels that are having what we call accent. And you have, for example, this one, A. They pronounce this one A. They pronounce this one A. This one they pronounce it E. This one they pronounce it E. They pronounce it E. This one you pronounce it what? E. This one you pronounce it E. This one you pronounce it E. This one you pronounce it E. Like in the word Noel. Noel, that is Christmas, etc. We elaborate more ahead. Now let's touch the common vowels in French. The common vowels in French. The first one is, let's go together, A. 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 That's why I say like A. A. You have in the word pa, pa. A. In the word pa, pa. Pa, pa. Meaning in English, father. Father. The next is E. E. Usually is silent. E. 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 Like in the word le. Like in the word le. That is the E. Like in the word le. The next is E. The next is E. 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 Like in the word see. Like in the word see, which means if in English. If. The next is O. The next is O. 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 Like in the word O. Like in the word O. Like in the word O. That is water. The next is U. The next is U. The next is U. U. You need to tie the O with your lips rounded to pronounce it properly. U. Like in the word tu. Like in the word tu. Tu. Round your lips. Tu. That is you, singular. The next is Y. 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 Sometimes they just pronounce it E. Like for example here, you have still. But usually they pronounce the Y. Y. Let's move now to some nasal vowels that are common in French because they have some nasal vowels. For example, you have ang, 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 am, am, ang, ang, m. You have that sound in the word angfang, angfang, angfang. That is child, angfang. The next, another sound is in, im, 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 ang, m, like in the word peng, 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 meaning in English, bread, peng, bread. Another sound in French is ong, ong, om, like in the word bong, 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 bong. That is meaning in English, good, good. Another sound, um, 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 For example, the word parfum, parfum, parfum. That is perfume. Let's move now to consonant, what we call in French consonne. Consonants, that is consonne. Most French consonants are similar to English, but there are some key differences. I mean that most French consonants are similar to English. You now have a lot of issues here, but there are some key differences. I mean that most consonants in French are similar to English, but there are some key differences. Let's go to some of the consonants. You have B, 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 like in the word bong, bong, B, B, like bong, that is good in English. The next, C, 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 you have it here, C, or K, K, they pronounce it either C, C, but remember that if you pronounce it C, it should be before E, I, Y. You pronounce it C, the rest you pronounce it K, that this one is pronounced either C or K. For example, to better understand, you have the word café. They don't say safé. You say café, café, because you are not having A here. That's why you took the sound K, became café, because you have A, café, that is coffee. The next, you say what here? You say ciel. Why do you pronounce it now C? Because you have E, becomes now ciel, 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 that is sky. Let's move on with the next consonant. D, 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 like dang, 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 meaning in English in, in, in. The next is F, 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 like in the word fleur, 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 that is flower in English. The next is G, 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 that is it here, G or G, but G should be before E, I, Y. Either you say J or J, but J should be before the vowels E, I, Y. Let's get some example. You have here garçon. Why do we say J? Because you have A is not here. Then you have garçon. Garçon, meaning in English, boy. The next now is what? Giraffe. We are having now the sound G because we are having here E. That's why they say giraffe. Giraffe. That is the animal we call giraffe. Giraffe. The next is ash. 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 Keep in mind that ash usually is silent in French. Usually. Not always, but usually silent. Ash usually is silent. For example, you have hotel. Mean that forget about the H. You just pronounce from here. Hotel. 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 The next is G. To better understand it, like in the word English, you have measure. Measure. Mean that take it as that G. Measure. Mean that G. For example, you have the word je. Je. Meaning in English, I. The next is L. Like in the word lune. That is moon. The next is M. The next N. Like in the word monk. That is hand in English. Monk. Hand in English. The next P. Like in the word pear. That is father. Pear. The next is Q. That's what is always with you. Q. For example, key. Meaning who in English. The next R. Example, rouge. Meaning red in English. Rouge, red in English. The next S. Or Z. When it's between vowels, you pronounce it Z. But usually it is S. But if it's between vowels, you pronounce it Z. Let's take some example. You have soleil. You're having a consonant and a vowel. And then you have to pronounce it S. Soleil. That is sun in English. Soleil. That is sun. Now see this one, they say maison. You don't say maison. No. You say maison. Why? Because the S is in between two vowels. E-A-O. That's why they say maison. that is house. The next is te, 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 te. Example, te, 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 which is F in English. Te, that is F in English. The next, ve, 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 ve. Example, V, 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 V. That is life in English. Life in English. The next, W, 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 W. Sometimes the W is also pronounced V depending on the context. You see, depending on the context. For example, you see here, they will not say wagon in French. That is not correct French. You see, that W will be pronounced V. But normally it's pronounced W. But since it's in front of a vowel, you say what? Wagon. 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 The next, X. 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 You see, in French they pronounce the X word X. 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 Or Z. Or Z. X becomes what? X. Or X. Or Z. For example, you have text. 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 Which is text in English. Examen. You see, becomes examen. Examen. Since the X is in front of a vowel, becomes examen. Examen. That is exam. The next is Z. 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 For example, zero. Zero. Zero, which is still the same meaning, is zero. Zero. Let's see now some key differences. The R in French is usually guttural. It's like a soft dagger, usually. Now, what about the H? As we saw, the H is silent, except for some key loan words. Like, for example, you have this word. You have to pronounce the H. Aïe. 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 You have to pronounce the H. That is hate. 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 Another sound is U versus U. U versus U. This is U. U. This you have to tight your lips as we saw with U. It's like in German. U. This one now U. It's just like in English. This one U. Now the final consonants are often silent in French. Usually, when you are having a vowel followed by a consonant, just drop the consonant in your mind. Don't pronounce it. For example, they don't say Paris. They don't say Paris. That is not correct. You say what? Paris. Since you have a vowel here, drop this one in your mind. You just say Paris. Paris. That is the capital of France. You just say Paris. Paris. This one also, what do you say? You don't say drop. Drop. No, since you have a vowel followed by a consonant, you drop it in your mind. The pronunciation, you just say throw. You just say throw. 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 Like for example, usually it's what they say too much. Throw. Throw. Too much. This time now we are going to touch numbers, and we are going to begin with the basics. That is, we are going to touch numbers from 0 to 20, and we make a comparison between English to French so that you can be able to really pronounce them properly and even use them properly in the French language. The first one is 0. What we pronounce in English, 0. In French is what? Zero. 0 is what? Zero. 0, 0. The next is what you call 1 in English. In French it is un. 1, un. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. The next is 3. 3 in French is trois. 3 is trois. 4 is 4. 4 is 4. 5 is 5. 6 is 6. 6 is 6. The next is 7. 7 is 7. 8 is 8. Don't forget that you don't pronounce the H. 8. Just start with the U. 8 is 8. 9 is 9. 10. 10 is 10. 11 is 11. 11 is 11. 12 is 12. 12 is 12. 13 is 13. 13 is 13. 14 is 14. 14 is 14. 15 is 15. 16 is 16. 17 is 17. 17 is 17. 18 is 18. 19 is 19. 19 is 19. 20 is 20. 20 is 20. Let's see some notes. You see that numbers 6 up to 9 in French, they differ significantly in pronunciation compared to English, as we saw there. For example, you have 6, that is 6. 7, which is 7. So there's a big difference. English 13 numbers, that is from 13 up to 19, all end in teen. For example, we saw 13, you see the end with teen, 14, 15, 16. French at times uses combinations of this plus the number at times, as we saw the case, like for example, 17 was 10 plus 7, which was 17. You see, 18 was, for example, 10 plus 8, that is 18. Usually they use that combination in French. Now the next, in French uses a nasal sound. This is it, a nasal sound, which is usually tricky for English speakers. But with practice, it will really be easy for you. Just continue to be exercising yourself. Now this sound, rui, which has this sound, is very difficult for French learners because it does not exist in French. You see, free, we don't have that sound in French. And that was it with these numbers. And with practice, everything will be okay. Just continue to practice, and practice. Adjectives in English and French. Ordinal numeral adjectives in both English and French. Ordinal numbers indicate position or order. For example, you have heard about first, second, third. Now below is a comparison between English and French ordinal numbers, including their formation, pronunciation, and usage rules. Now what about the formation of ordinal numbers? We are going to see some comparisons here between English and French. In English, you say first. In French, it will not depend on the gender. When it's masculine, you say what? Premier. First. When it's masculine, it is what? Premier. Now, if it is feminine, what do you say? First becomes première. First. When it's feminine, it is première. Second. In French, either you use this one or this one. We pronounce it deuxième. Second, either you use this one or this one, it is deuxième. Second is deuxième. Third. Troisième. Fourth. Quatrième. Fifth. Cinquième. Sixth. Sixième. Seventh. Septième. Eighth. Huitième. Ninth. Neuvième. Tenth. Dixième. Eleventh. Onzième. onzième, onzième, 20th, 20th, vingtième, 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 21st, 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 21e, 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 100th, 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 centième, 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 1000th, 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 millième, 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 millième. Let's see some key rules in French versus English. Key rules in French versus English. Formation differences. In English, most ordinals they add this at the end. For example, 4 becomes 4th. 4 becomes 4th. Then 10 becomes 10th. 10 becomes 10th. You have some few exceptions. For example, first. That's how they write it. First. You don't add this one. You don't first. It's another one. Second. Second. You don't add this. This is it. Second. Third. Third. Now what about French? In French, most ordinals add em. They add em to form the ordinal. For example, quatre, that is 4. Quatre will become quatrième. You see, you add the em, becomes quatrième. Now 10, that is 10, will become dixième. Add the em, dixième, that is 10th. 10th. This is 4th. Now there are some exceptions also. For example, you have premier, premier, that is first when you are dealing with the masculine. Premier, that is first in case of masculine. Now if it is feminine, that premier is première instead. Première, that is first, becomes premier in case of feminine. Now what about abbreviations of these ordinals? You have first, second, third, fourth, etc. in English. Now in French, it will not depend on the gender. You have premier, as we said, for masculine, premier. Now if it is feminine, it is what? Première, première, première. Now this one now, deuxième, both are accepted. That is, if it's masculine or feminine, you just say deuxième. There is no change. Deuxième. The same also from deuxième. You have troisième, quatrième, etc. You just use this one. You will not change like in the case of premier or première. Now, gender and plural agreement, that is in French only. That is where you are having those changes in genders. As we saw here, premier or première is only in French that you have that. You don't have that in English because you have premier for masculine, then you have première in case of feminine. For example, you have le premier jour, which is the first day in English. Le premier jour, the first day. You have your ordinal here. This is it here. Le premier jour, the first day. Another one will be la première fois. La première fois, the first time. You see, since fois is feminine, that's why we have première. La première fois, the first time. Other ordinals, they add em and do not change except for plurals. For example, you have les 10e anniversaires. Les 10e anniversaires. The 10th birthdays. So you add the S when it's plural. Les 10e anniversaires. The 10th birthdays. In English, there is no change, but in French, when it's plural, you have to add the S. at the end. At the end. Now, what about pronunciation of this ordinal? Let's go together. Premier, 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 premier. Deuxième, deuxième, deuxième. But what do we say here? Second, second for masculine. If it's when you say what? Seconde, seconde, seconde. And we learn that second is usually used in a pair. Usually use second in a pair. The next, cinquième, 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 cinquième. Let's see now some examples in sentences. Some examples in sentences. This is my first time in Paris. This is my first time in Paris. This is my first time in Paris. In French, it will be what? C'est ma première fois à Paris. As we said, you drop the S. C'est ma première fois à Paris. He lives on the third floor. He lives on the third floor. Il habite au troisième étage. Il habite au troisième étage. She won the second prize. She won the second prize. Elle a gagné le deuxième prix. She won the second prize. Elle a gagné le deuxième prix. The 21st century is digital. The 21st century is digital. Le 21e siècle est numérique. Le 21e siècle est numérique. Let's see now some special cases and exceptions. Like we saw, we have second versus deuxième. Now, second or second implies only two options. La seconde main, that is the second hand. La seconde main, the second hand. Deuxième is used in sequences beyond two. For example, le deuxième jour. Le deuxième jour, the second day in a series. Le deuxième jour, the second day in a series. Now, Roman numerals are often used for centuries and monarchs. That Roman numerals are often used for centuries and monarchs. For example, Louis the 14th. Louis the 14th. In French, it will be what? Louis XIVe. Louis XIVe. Now let's see a summary now of what we just taught, English and French. First, we said it will depend in French. If it's masculine, it is premier. Premier. If it's feminine, it is première. Première. Second, in English. In French, it will be what? Deuxième. Deuxième. Second. Second. In the deuxième, second. That is masculine. If it is feminine now, deuxième does not change. You still have deuxième, deuxième. But second now we change. You have to add the E. Seconde. Seconde. Now third, masculine you have troisième. Same also in feminine. Troisième, troisième. Fourth, same also. Quatrième in masculine. Quatrième, quatrième in feminine. Quatrième. na fifth. Fifth, same also. Cinquième, masculine. Cinquième, feminine. Six, six. Sixième, sixième, sixième. Seventh, seventh. Septième, septième. Seventh, septième, septième. If, if. Huitième, huitième. Huitième, huitième. Ninth, ninth. Neuvième, neuvième. Neuvième, neuvième. Tenth, tenth. Dixième, dixième. Dixième, dixième. Let's go now with our final notes on ordinals. French ordinals must agree in gender and number, unlike the English language. Premier is the only ordinal with a distinct feminine form. This is the only one where you have premier for masculine and then première for feminine. Second is optional but often used in pairs. When you're having pairs, instead of using deuxième, you can decide to use second if it's masculine or seconde in case of feminine. Thank you for paying attention. The next lesson now we are going to touch how we tell time in English. Once again, thank you for paying attention to the lesson.